Chapter 376, Too Careless. The guilds had to advance or retreat together because it was just like Blue River said, the materials Lord Grimm had requested just happened to be within their limit of acceptance. If everyone equally split the materials, it was still bearable. However, if a single guild backed out, sharing the cost would be difficult. Herb Garden had already left, though, but Yi Shu didn't know that, so the list of materials he wanted already made the remaining guilds extremely unwilling. Two guilds immediately refused. Splitting the cost was now impossible. And from the looks of it, ceding land was also unacceptable. The two guilds didn't want to talk anymore and planned on continuing to delay matters. The group chat went silent for a while again. Zhang Yu began, "Have you two already decided?" "Decided," the two practically said at the time, making the others wonder if they were discussing with each other in private. Altogether, 3 guilds have already left. From what I see, there's already no point in this group chat. Zhang Yu's personality was very direct. He was extremely disappointed in this alliance and he clearly had some anger in him. After throwing these words down, he directly left the group. Cold Night followed soon after. The remaining guilds saw that there really was no point, so they left as well. In the blink of an eye, the group chat dissolved because there was no one there. Each guild began to discuss with themselves for their own plan. Everyone had already seen the conditions and they was still the same as before, so therefore, some of the guilds began to negotiate with Yi Shu. Misty Lock and West Riding Wind had different ideas, though. They felt that, with Thousand Wave Lake's size and Happy's few players, taking complete control over the entire map wasn't possible. They might as well try delaying to see what would happen. The group chat dissolved as the guilds went on their own paths. No one knew what the others were planning. However, Yi Shu had a good understanding of the situation. There were a total of 9 guilds competing in Thousand Waves Lake. All of them had fought together during the Christmas event. One of them had conflicting interests with the others and immediately cut off any and all connections. Although Yi Shu felt it was a bit of a pity, he wasn't too surprised. The other side clearly hadn't been able to reach a unanimous decision towards Yi Shu's condition, resulting in Blue Brook Guild and Tyrannical Ambition contacting Yi Shu. They had hoped to pay materials in order to obtain the right for a peaceful development at Thousand Waves Lake. Yi Shu didn't care which guild was which. If someone agreed, then he would happily welcome them. He had already calculated that the guilds definitely had the materials he wanted, so everything went along smoothly. Blue Brook Guild, Tyrannical Ambition. Yi Shu confirmed that it was these 2 guilds and then reminded them that when they came to Thousand Waves Lake, they had to make sure their guild tags were turned on in order to avoid any mistakes. It would be best if they could tell him the others' positions. That way, Yi Shu could save some time since he wouldn't need to take as many detours. The 2 guilds had sent Blue River and Cold Night to talk with Yi Shu. The 2 understood Yi Shu's thoughts very well, so they accepted in satisfaction. They were already spending materials, so they wouldn't hesitate to make the most out of it. Right now, they were hoping that God would kill the players from other guilds quickly. "What are the other guilds planning?" Yi Shu asked Blue River. "Tell me." "Senior, I'm not your spy." Blue River was filled with grief. "I wasn't asking about your Blue Brook Guild. Don't I already know what your Blue Brook Guild has planned? I'm asking about the other guilds," Yi Shu said. "Don't know. That's not possible. As Blue Brook Guild's backbone and core member, it's your responsibility and duty to accurately report information on the others' guilds to their enemies. I'm sure you know that the enemy of your enemy is your friend. From this perspective, we're friends, so why are you still protecting your enemies? I'm looking down on you," Yi Shu said. Blue River's cheeks were streaked with tears. What type of nonsense was this? Why did it seem logical? "I really don't know what the other guilds are planning," Blue River said. "Then do you have a general idea?" Yi Shu asked. "Some of them have decided to continue wandering around Thousand Waves Lake," Blue River said. Yi Shu expressed that he was thinking. Blue River didn't think that it was anything important, when suddenly, he received another message with a sharp question. "You guys did this as a temporary measure. What are you planning?" Sure enough, he had guessed that their temporary measure wasn't without reason. However, this question touches on our Blue Brook Guild's interests, so I have a good reason not to answer, right? Blue River replied. Oh, so you really do have plans? Blue River coughed up blood. With Thousand Wave Lakes terrain, I reckon that you guys have no means of dealing with this situation. Are you guys planning on asking for outside help? Yi Shu began to guess. Blue River remained silent. If you ask for outside help, you would have to tell them who I am. And if that's the case, there wouldn't be many people who would dare help. Hey, Blue River couldn't listen anymore. If you don't believe me, go ask your team. In the water, even Huang Shaoshan wouldn't dare come, Yi Shu said. The team has the numbers advantage, Blue River said. If they all come into the game, then wouldn't that mean they'd be giving up on their team record? Yi Shu asked back. If each guild sends one pro, it'll be enough, Blue River remained stubborn. Disturbing all of these teams is kind of embarrassing, Yi Shu said. You scared? Blue River secretly felt good, especially because the other side didn't reply back after he sent the message. Blue River didn't keep talking though. He hadn't been on his account for several days, so his character's experience was falling behind. He put on his equipment and prepared to gain some good experience. Not long after he began to travel, a message popped up. He checked and Lord Grimm had replied. TCH, you were just bluffing. I just went and asked around. None of the teams said they were sending players over. What? Who'd you ask? The players from every team, Yi Shu said. Blue River had run out of tears. How could he forget? This guy had a completely different status than he did. The other side didn't need to guess. He could just directly go to the pro circle and ask. He had been in the pro scene for so many years. How could he not have known players from the other teams? It's late now. We were planning on notifying them tomorrow, Blue River continued to quibble. Did I hear that right? How come it sounds like you're the club's boss or the team captain? They're just going to come if you tell them to come? Are you summoning creatures? Yi Shu replied. Blue River stayed silent. Liar. Lie after lie, Yi Shu didn't let up. Blue River could only reply with ellipses. Oh, I found a party. Talk to you later, Yi Shu suddenly replied. Which guild? Blue River asked excitedly. Yours. F***CK your sister. We made an agreement, Blue River cried in shock. Had this punk completely joined in on the guild battle and was now going back on his word? I lied. They're from Misty Castle. Blue River coughed up blood again. Wasn't he busy? How could he still joke around like that? But Misty Castle was good. Misty Castle hadn't felt that this was problematic. Letting them get a good taste of retribution would be good. Speaking of Misty Castle, they had already been wiped out once. Did that team really just rush back, only to be killed once again? How unlucky of them. Blue River's guess was correct. Misty Castle's party really was just that unlucky. Before, they had been closed in on, unbeknownst to them and died. They had just rushed back and this time, they were able to save some time though. Right before they were about to enter the water, they saw Lord Grimm's group jump out of the water. A dungeon team would only have 5 players. With Yi Shu and Su Mucheng there, wiping them out was very easy, whether it was on land or on water. In addition, they had Tang Ru, Steamed Bun Invasion, Thousand Creations. And the cheerleader, Concealed Light. It could be said that this battle on the shore was even more without suspense than it was in the water. Yi Shu and Su Mucheng were as valiant as ever. Plus, Tang Ru was going all out. Tang Ru's skill was already much better than the usual guild elite. Even the elite teams from the grandest of guilds were nothing but paper in front of these opponents and were easily cleaned up. Misty Lock naturally became furious after hearing this news. You pigs. You clearly knew that there was danger. Why didn't you scout it out clearly first and choose a better route? The players who were being yelled at also had their cheeks streaked with tears. It wasn't that they weren't being careless. It was just that they just didn't think that the other side would hide at the shore side. Weren't they supposed to be wandering around the dungeon island? This move looked as if the other side was waiting for them to return. It was way too shameless. Care a bit more. Be more careful. Is that too much to ask? Misty Lock personally lectured them. Misty Castle had formed their own group chat with the overall guild leader personally directing the 10 servers' elite teams. What could the 5 players who were being yelled at say? They had to run over from the main city again. Work's done. Let's continue on with what we were saying. Yishu chatted up with Blue River again. I already have nothing to say to you. Has your dungeon team come over yet? Yishu asked. What are you planning on doing? Blue River was being extremely cautious. If you see any other guilds, give me a call, Yishu said. Quote. You'll be coming over to level here, right? You pay attention, too, Yishu said. I'm not a spy. Didn't you keep on stressing that you were a spy before? That was that account. It's all the same to me. Pay attention. If you find anyone, tell me, Yishu said. Okay, I'll talk to you later, Yishu added. Which guild now? Blue River was surprised. What insane efficiency. It was fortunate that their Blue Brook guild had made an agreement. It's quite embarrassing to tell you, but it's Misty Castle again. Sigh, they're too careless, Yishu replied, while looking through reports from his guild. He had the manpower now, too. Chapter 377, One After Another. The majority of the guild players were around level 30 and were relatively inexperienced, which meant they weren't able to actually go to Thousand Waves Lakes and fight in the leveling area. However, they were good enough to stay on watch on the road from Kanji City to Thousand Waves Lake. Most of the players in the 10th server were around level 30. If they hid their guild tag, it would be impossible to recognize who they were if they stuck within a crowd. As for those level 35 and above players who had just joined, Yishu didn't maneuver them because he knew that there were spies hidden amongst them. He couldn't be certain that those players who were around level 30 weren't spies, but the risk for that was much less. Even more so, Yishu wasn't ordering every member of the guild to move. Instead, he only picked a handful of them, asking them to take note of certain players. If a spy got in, then he could only blame his bad luck. From the looks of it, none of the ones he had chosen were spies. In addition, they had completed their mission very well. After all, they had only just recently joined the guild, so they were still enthusiastic about the guild's errands. Misty Castle's dungeon team had been noticed this way by these inconspicuous low-level players, who then notified Yishu. From the direction they were moving in, Yishu could easily figure out which route they were taking. Misty Castle's team hadn't thought about this possibility and had only thought about being careful around the lake. How could they not have been mopped up by Yishu? Even more tragic was that Misty Castle's players still hadn't noticed the problem yet. They simply thought that their luck was just bad. The dungeon team was once again completely defenseless when they came out of Kanji City. They rushed out onto the main road and were being watched the entire time by Guild Happy's players, who excitedly notified their guild leader. Yishu looked at their reports and figured out their route once again. This time, let's be a bit more active. Yishu didn't underestimate his opponents. How? The others asked. We'll just ambush them on land and be done with it, Yishu said as he led them out of Thousand Waves Lake. They found a random hiding spot along the main road from Kanji City to Thousand Waves Lake and hid there. How are we going to attack this time? Concealed Light asked. Even though this guy was quite useless in actual battle, he was always the most serious player when it came to preparations before the battle. Concealed Light was the type of person who, if you said one was one, then one was one. There was no changing it. When a plan was carried out, his firmness to stick with it would already be approaching stubbornness. Even though wiping them out isn't that hard, we can't be too careless either. Concealed Light, when the time comes, summon your creatures and do your best to fill up any gaps in our encirclement, Yishu said. Okay, Concealed Light said solemnly. In reality, Yishu had already said this numerous times today. However, every time, when a new battle started, Concealed Light would always ask again. Hearing the same arrangement over and over again didn't make him feel tired of it. Everyone else did the same as always. Pay attention to coordinating with each other, Yishu said. With him and Su Mucheng there, wiping out a 5-man team wasn't a problem. It didn't matter whether or not the others were there. However, since this was on land, Yishu hoped to let Tang Ru and the others practice and gain some experience. If we hide here, even though they can't see us, we can't see them either, Steam Bun Invasion said. The 6 of them were currently hiding behind a big rock. This way works, Steam Bun Invasion suddenly started jumping up and down. Don't do that, Yi Shu hastily stopped him. By taking into account their movement speed and their distance, we can accurately calculate how long it will take for them to arrive, Concealed Light explained. Correct, Yi Shu said. How's your grasp on the other team's situation? Can you calculate it? I can try. Concealed Light was feeling rather confident in himself at this moment. The last report had their coordinates at 3654, 2865, times 054, Yi Shu said. Okay, Concealed Light immediately began calculating it. After a short moment, he gave out his answer. If nothing unexpected happens, they should arrive in 7 minutes and 21 seconds. Wow. Not bad, Yi Shu praised. Concealed Light's mechanics might be awful, but he was quite keen in this area, and was especially good with the game's numbers. Tang Ru and Steam Bun Invasion, on the other hand, were very lacking in this area. If we have so much time, we can go up a bit and kill them earlier, Tang Ru said. After killing them, we have to go back to Thousand Waves Lake. In terms of time, this place is the best location, Yi Shu said. Tang Ru heard this and appeared to understand, even though, in actuality, she didn't. Concealed Light, on the other hand, knew that this was another calculation that had to be considered. Even though it was only a small amount of time, if it could be grasped accurately, then it would still save them some time. 7 minutes of waiting wasn't that long. They had found some random stuff to do to pass the time, and when it was almost time, they immediately switched back to the game. Switch to using messages to speak. After returning to the game, Yi Shu messaged the team. Are they almost here? Everyone switched to messaging. Yeah. Listen carefully. There'll be footsteps. By listening to how loud or soft they are, it's possible to figure out how far away they are from us, Yi Shu said. As a result, the 6 of them crouched behind the stone and began listening intently. They're here, Yi Shu suddenly messaged. Where? Steam Bun Invasion was completely unaware. Around 20 units away, Su Mucheng said. It's 20 now. It was 22 before, Yi Shu said. The 2 pros had the ability to determine distance from the sound of footsteps. Even though the others had no idea whether or not the 2 were right or wrong, from Yi Shu's confident voice, they could tell that Su Mucheng wasn't as good in this area as Yi Shu. Careful. Focus on one set of footsteps. Yi Shu didn't waste his teaching materials and helped everyone out. Crouch and go around, Yi Shu suddenly messaged. Thousand Creations was very experienced in this area. Crouching while walking wouldn't produce any footsteps. It was a necessary movement for sneak attacks from behind. He immediately crouched down and went around the big rock. He heard the sound of footsteps pass by. When his body circled around the big rock, he just happened to see the figures of 5 players. Thousand Creations continued to worship. Tang Ru, Steam Bun Invasion, and Concealed Light followed closely behind Thousand Creations. Quietly, a line of players had formed behind Misty Castle's 5 players. The 4 looked at one another. They didn't hear any orders from Yi Shu, so they didn't act. Suddenly, they heard a gunshot. The first one to move wasn't Yi Shu, but Su Mucheng's cleansing mist. They were already accustomed to this situation. In the majority of the battles, Su Mucheng's launcher pulled the monsters from far away. When monsters were pulled, they would rush over. But players were different. This gunshot had been too sudden. The 5 weren't noobs and immediately scattered. After seeing Cleansing Mist's name, they almost started crying on the spot. They already knew who they had run into. The 5 didn't have any intentions of fighting. They immediately wanted to turn and run, when suddenly, they saw 4 characters crouching behind them stand up. The right side became their only escape route. The 5 didn't need to communicate with one another and rushed in that direction. But then a character suddenly appeared in front of them with the terrifying ID floating above his head, Lord Grimm. The 5 players' hands trembled and almost crouched down like the 4 behind them. Against top-tier pro players, the 5 truly didn't dare to fight them head-on. The 4 players that were behind them seemed less scary than the pros on their sides. As a result, they turned around and charged at the players behind them. However, when they turned around, there were no longer just 4 of them. That summoner had summoned all of his creatures, who now stood by the 4 players to form a great wall. The 5 fell into despair as the other side began to attack. There's no need to describe the battle. Their defeat came swiftly. Afterwards was another roar by Misty Lock in the group chat. What? Again? They ambushed us on the road. We didn't think. You couldn't even think of that. Did you guys forget to bring your brains with you when you left? Misty Lock was truly furious and he denounced them savagely. This Yi Chu is too excessive. Why isn't he looking for tyrannical ambition to attack? Why is he set on our Misty Castle? Misty Lock was unbearably depressed. Hazy Mist wanted to say that Yi Chu probably didn't have any special hate towards them. It was just that their Misty Castle was showing openings and giving the other side the opportunities. Though in the end, he wasn't able to say it and called Yi Chu shameless along with his guild leader. What now? After dying 3 times, the 5 players' cheeks were streaked with tears. They hadn't gone to the dungeon this entire night and their experience had already fell by 30%, and that wasn't even including the previous massacre. In that massacre, one of them had been among the dead, so he had lost a total of 40% of his experience today. That loss was too great. An entire day wouldn't even be enough to get it back. Hazy, what do you think? Misty Lock asked. I think that the other guild's teams are already in the dungeon, so Yi Chu only has our team to attack. Let's not fight with him and hide for now. When the other dungeon teams come out, there will be new targets for him. At that time, we can take that chance to get to the dungeon, Hazy Mist suggested. Chapter 378, Separate Attacks. Misty Castle's players might stop coming for now. Yi Chu received reports from the guild members that were assigned to Kanji City. This time, after reviving, Misty Castle's dungeon team didn't seem to have any plans for leaving the city. 2 of them were taking a stroll in the market, another 2 had gone to the arena and 1 was just standing there, staring blankly into space. Ha ha ha, they're smart. They at least know what fear is. Steam Bun Invasion was delighted. Steam Bun, you and Concealed Light go and train. You can leave Thousand Waves Lake to us, Yi Chu said. Steam Bun Invasion and Concealed Light were more than 5 levels lower than Thousand Waves Lake's monsters, so even if the 2 possessed the ability to beat the monsters here, the experience they would gain would be reduced because it was over the 5-level range. Leveling here was absolutely no good. Senior, will you guys be okay without us? Steam Bun Invasion asked in a serious tone. We'll be fine. If not, we'll call for you, Yi Chu said. No problem. You can call for us whenever you'd like. Steam Bun Invasion gave out a mighty expression. He turned around and looked towards Concealed Light. Let's go, little bro. Say bye-bye to everyone. F*CK off, Concealed Light was sad. Steam Bun Invasion didn't stop treating him like a little bro, he was treating him like a little kid. The 2 went off to their own suitable leveling areas. Yi Chu and the other 3 were at the perfect level for Thousand Waves Lake, so they returned there. The guilds were no longer attacking together. If it was just a 5-player team, let alone 4 players, Yi Chu alone would enough to beat them. The reason they were in a group was for carrying out Yi Chu's usual battle spirit. If he was going to kill, then he would kill them all. Thousand Waves Lake was as calm as it was before. There was no one in sight. Yi Chu looked at the time, it was 1:17 a.m. Even if the guild dungeon team started at 12 o'clock sharp, there was no way they'd be finished with their 3 runs already. The guilds that had participated in the Christmas event had each sent out 8 players. In other words, 3 of them were left out. For newer players, it wasn't possible for them to clear Thousand Waves Lake with just 3 players. However, these were all veterans from the Heavenly Domain, so Yi Chu reckoned that it would be possible for them. The top guilds were still competing for the dungeon records, so an elite team consisting of a complete 5 players was necessary. The 3 that left out would have a harder time, or perhaps they might look for other guilds to form parties with. Yi Chu guessed, but he couldn't be certain. In truth, Misty Lock's thoughts weren't wrong. Thousand Waves Lake was too huge and the number of players Yi Chu could use were way too little. If he had wanted to cover the entire lake and make it so that it was impossible for the other players to enter, it would be impossible with just Yi Chu's small group. They could only continue chasing and killing the other guilds in order to threaten the guilds to give in. For example, Misty Castle had been a successful case, where they had to give up because they were too afraid of the dangers. What now? Tang Ru asked after seeing that there was no one left to fight at Thousand Waves Lake. Would you be fine with a 1v5? Yi Shu asked. In the water? On land. I could try. But if they run, there would be nothing I could do, Tang Ru said. Of course, if they split up and run, there's nothing anyone could do, but you could at least kill one of them, Yi Shu said. Okay, Tang Ru nodded her head. What about you, Thousand Creations? Yi Shu asked. Thousand Creations. God, don't joke with me, Thousand Creations wiped away some sweat. But getting their attention shouldn't be any problem, right? I remember you being very good at taunting, Yi Shu said. Thousand Creations was speechless. The past had come back to haunt him. At the time, he had taunted because he was too weak when compared to the god, which was why he had been preyed on because the other side thought he was easier to deal with. However, that was completely different. He hadn't known of Lord Grimm's identity at that time. Thousand Creations had felt extremely annoyed at that time. But now that he knew of Lord Grimm's true identity, there was nothing he could say. Compared to God Yi Chu, being a worse player was a given. God, what do you want me to do? If you can't beat them, then lure them to where we are, Yi Shu said. Okay, I'll do my best, Thousand Creations said. That's good. Next, we'll be camping at the dungeon entrance. We don't know which entrance they'll be coming from, so each person will each take one. The more you can kill the better. Thousand Creations, you can just report your position and then we'll find a way to meet up, Yi Shu planned. Understood, the three affirmed. Horse Shooter, you'll be the same as Thousand Creations, Yi Shu suddenly called. Okay. Quote, the voice came out from the grove near the shore. The launcher, Horse Shooter, came out from there. He had been hiding there the entire time and had killed some monsters onshore, while keeping an eye out. Horse Shooter had been the one to discover Misty Castle's dungeon team the first time. It was too bad that his observation range was limited because he was by himself. He had only found Misty Castle's tracks. He had continued to wander around after that, but he hadn't been able to find anyone else. Soon after, the 5 players went into the lake and split up. After each of them chose an entrance, they landed and reported to each other. Then, they began to study how to ambush the teams coming from the entrance in front of them. In the dungeon, teams from 12 guilds were fighting hard. Amongst these, 9 of them had made an alliance in order to resist the threat of Guild Happy. However, they had suffered losses in the previous water battle. Among these 9 guilds, Blue Brook Guild and Tyrannical Ambition had paid materials in order to ensure their safety. Misty Castle was too scared and they didn't dare show up at Thousand Waves Lake for now. Right now, 6 guilds were Yi Shu's targets. Yi Shu had obviously told the other 4 beforehand. Herb Garden, Howling Heights, Blossom Valley, Royal Heritage, 301, and Void Walk. 6 guilds backed by clubs. Herb Garden didn't need to be said. They had the champion team, Team Tiny Herb, behind them. The other 5 might be a bit weaker on paper, but they were all strong competitors as well. As long as they got into the playoffs, there were endless possibilities. The next champion team was never fixed. And only these types of competitive teams would even have their guilds bicker over every gain or loss. The other 3 guilds who had participated in the Christmas event didn't have that much ambition. They were satisfied with simply having their own place in the alliance. Their thoughts weren't to win, but rather it was to not lose. They would still try hard to compete for the dungeon records, but they didn't have that sort of ambition to go all out like the top guilds. They hadn't participated in chasing and killing Lord Grimm, so when Yi Shu counterattacked, they wouldn't be his targets. Outside of the game, Yi Shu created his own group chat on QQ. He called for the others to go on QQ and then send them a complete list. The others looked and saw that it was the predicted time for when the 6 guilds would finish their 3 runs. Where'd you get this from? Thousand Creations was astonished. It's just a guess, Yi Shu said. A guess? The dungeon strategy they're using is from my guide. I can look at the 8 characters from each guild on the level standings and I can figure out which team composition is the most optimal. Then, I make a good guess on how long it takes for them to clear the dungeon. That's not so hard, is it? Yi Shu said. Oh, so it's like that. Thousand Creations wasn't too amazed. He had already reminded himself that he was currently playing with one of Glory's top experts. He couldn't keep on looking at things like he had in the past or he'd die from shock sooner or later. His view on things had to be very wide. Everyone, pay attention. Remember these 6 times, Yi Shu said. The 6 times were around the same. The elite teams were putting in all of their efforts into the dungeon and so their characters' strengths were around the same. The only differences were the players and some luck from the dungeons. Before the time came, the 5 players killed some monsters around the lake in order to not waste any time. When the time grew near, they immediately went to the spots they had chosen beforehand. Yi Shu and Su Mucheng weren't afraid of battles in the water, so they could choose any spot. The other 3 were different, however. They wanted to finish matters on land. Tang Ru was looking for a battle, but Thousand Creations and Horse Shooter were only planning on luring their opponents to where God was. They weren't fighting a battle on mechanics, but rather, a psychological battle. How are things going? The time had jumped into the range that Yi Shu had predicted. Yi Shu was already asking for information in the team channel. Nothing here. Nothing here. Nothing here. I have Blue Brook Guild here. Thousand Creations was hiding to the side of the dungeon entrance, waiting for a character to exit out of the dungeon. But the character he saw jump out had a Blue Brook Guild tag on him. Don't worry about Blue Brook Guild, Yi Shu replied. I know, Thousand Creations said. He didn't need to be concerned about Blue Brook Guild, but it was a bit awkward. Thousand Creations didn't show himself and instead shrunk back as Blue Brook Guild's 5 players left the dungeon. Ah, what good luck, Su Mucheng suddenly said. What is it? I have 2 teams. On Su Mucheng's side, 1 dungeon team came out. Before she could make a move, another team came out. Herb Garden and Royal Heritage. These 2 guilds' teams had appeared in front of Su Mucheng. Su Mucheng was alone, so surrounding them was impossible, which meant there wasn't any point in being sneaky. As a result, she chose not to hide and directly stood outside of the dungeon entrance. The first team was still astonished, when suddenly the second team came out and saw Su Mucheng's cleansing mist fire a shot from her cannon. F***CK. The curses from the 10 players were nearly in perfect sync as they scattered to dodge the artillery shell. The fear in their hearts only magnified Su Mucheng's attack. It made the attack seem like an atomic bomb rather than an anti-tank missile. Chapter 379, 2 Types of Intimidation. Thousand Wave Lake's dungeon entrance was a cave. The echo from the cannon shot was extremely frightening. The 10 players had dodged it, but they all felt that they were going to die very soon. They didn't think about too much. As soon as they saw Su Mucheng's character, they immediately thought Yi Chu would be nearby. As for any others, they weren't that important. Those 2 were enough to wipe them all out. None of the players had been hit by the artillery shell, but they had immediately scattered as if the shock wave from the explosion had pushed them away. Aside from the direction directly facing cleansing mist, every other direction had a splash sound. There's no way they can kill all 10 of us. All of them had thoughts like this. They weren't wrong though. However, they would certainly have to sacrifice a few in order for the majority to get away. There really was nothing that Su Mucheng could do. No matter how good she was, it wasn't possible to catch 10 players with just one person, so she chose a random one to chase after. One poor player won the lottery. Su Mucheng's cleansing mist flew over and fired a shell while in midair. Running as fast as he could was the only thought he had in his mind as the shell exploded above his head. It was only 1 hit. His character was far from dead, but not his heart, because he knew that no matter what he tried, it would be of no use. This player was already similar to that of a corpse, floating on the surface of the water in a daze. However, this pitiful behavior actually made Su Mucheng make a mistake. Su Mucheng thought that at this moment, no matter what he tried, whether it be hiding, continuing to run, or counter-attacking, the player would definitely dive into the water. Temporarily escaping from the opponent's field of view was the most optimal choice. As a result, Su Mucheng dove into the water predicting this. But how could she know that this brother would have given up so decisively and would stop moving? Cleansing Mist dove all the way down into the bottom of the lake and missed the player. However, Su Mucheng quickly realized this and adapted. In a pro player's eyes, this mistake was just a mistake. But for a regular player, they wouldn't even have known what had happened. In the water, Su Mucheng turned around and didn't take notice of how poor this player's reactions were. While she comboed several attacks, she had already begun looking for where the others had run off to and prepared to hurry and try to kill another one. Since the player wasn't resisting, he quickly turned into a real corpse and didn't even revive after a long while. The player probably wasn't even in front of his computer anymore. Su Mucheng didn't think about it too much. While she had been attacking, she had chosen her next target. She fired a shot underwater and used the recoil to propel her character. The water swirled as Su Mucheng shot towards her next target. Aerial fire could be used in the water, too, and it was faster than swimming. From far away, it looked like Cleansing Mist was bobbing up and down repeatedly, leaving behind ripples after ripples. She had quickly closed in on her target. This player had discovered that Su Mucheng had been chasing him long ago. He was so nervous that his keyboard's up button was practically broken by now. He hated how the game wasn't like a car. No matter how hard he pressed, his speed wouldn't increase. Su Mucheng had obviously chosen her target very well. Her target was neither a gunner nor a witch, since those types of classes with high movement speed skills. She knew that even if his mechanics were 10 times better than hers, if she continued to chase, she would eventually catch up. Sometimes in the game, there was nothing you could do. In the blink of an eye, she had caught up. This target wasn't as pitiful as the previous target and had already dived into the water long beforehand in order to escape from her line of sight. But in front of a pro, he was simply displaying his slight skill in front of an expert. It was obviously useless. Su Mucheng accurately caught up in the time that she had predicted and fired. The target tried to resist, so it took Su Mucheng 10 seconds longer to kill him. Of the 10 players, Su Mucheng had successfully killed off 2 of them. There was no longer anyone in her line of sight, but Su Mucheng still went towards a direction to search for more. With the 10 players running in this manner, killing 3 of them was the limit. The third relied on luck too. Su Mucheng remembered which direction they had initially gone off to, but whether or not the player changed directions midway was something that she had no way of knowing. After all, quite some time had passed since they had scattered. "How's it going on your side?" Yishu asked in the team chat. "It'd be great if pro matches played out like this," Su Mucheng sighed in lament. "What is it?" "As soon as I appeared, they scattered," Su Mucheng said. "Ha ha, how many did you kill?" "Currently, 2. There's still one more that I'm not sure if I'll be able to get." "That'll depend on your luck." Yishu had already guessed the situation. "Yeah. What about you guys?" Su Mucheng asked. "I've got nothing here," Yishu sighed. "Nothing here either," Horse Shooter said. "None," Tang Ru said. "None." Thousand Creations was the same. Because Glory had so many players, characters couldn't pass through one another, which was why dungeon entrances were often packed with players. One entrance wasn't enough for everyone. As a result, no matter which leveling area it was, there would always be several dungeon entrances. In Thousand Waves Lake, one dungeon entrance was an island. Su Mucheng encountering 2 teams was already extremely lucky. In comparison, not finding anyone was even more likely. "It seems like it's about time." Thousand Creations looked at the times that Yishu had calculated. "That's just in theory though. It's not that rigid in reality, so we can afford to wait a few more minutes," Yishu replied. "Got it. I still remember where a few of them were heading. Do you guys want to try and stop them?" Su Mucheng asked. "I'll go then," Yishu replied. Finding them would require going into the water. Only he could do that. For the others, it was hard to say whether they would win or lose. "Oh, I have some here," Tang Ru suddenly said excitedly. The other 3 could only hear this, but Yishu could see it. Yishu turned his head and looked at Tang Ru's screen to get an accurate first-hand report. It was Guild Voidwalk's team. They were influenced by their team's style since Voidwalk had a lot of players playing as a Ghostblade. Even though class composition was important to the guild, this sort of characteristic from fans would still be revealed. After all, these types of loyal supporters were the club's foundation. As a result, Voidwalk had many Ghostblades, Blue Brook Guild had many Blade Masters, Excellent Dynasty had many Battle Mages, and Tyrannical Ambitions had many Strikers. These were not coincidences. At this moment, Voidwalk's dungeon team had 2 Ghostblades, who were naturally imitating Team Void's classic Ghostblade duo. Of course, an imitation was still an imitation. If they could reach Li Zan and Wu Yusa's level, then they wouldn't be here running dungeons. Tang Ru wanted to fight though, so she didn't hide and immediately appeared outside the dungeon entrance. As soon as the 5 players came out, the 2 sides faced each other. The 5 players were all surprised, but Tang Ru wasn't as shocking as Su Mucheng. The 10 who saw Su Mucheng had immediately scattered, but the 5 who saw Tang Ru looked for a bit longer, thinking over what their situation was. Besides Soft Mist, there were no signs of anyone else. What type of conspiracy is this? The 5 couldn't help but feel uneasy. There's something strange, one said. I agree, another agreed. Let me say something, another interjected and then followed. The other side has Yi Chu and Su Mucheng. They wouldn't need anything strange to deal with us, right? The listeners stared blankly. The 2 who had thought that there was something odd immediately felt embarrassed. That's right. What was their identity? The strongest duo in all of Glory didn't need any tricks to beat them. They were overestimating themselves too much. Could she be alone? One person was still unsure. Yi Chu and Su Mucheng definitely aren't here though. If not, then she'd have attacked long ago, one player said. With those words, it's still strange. The 5 couldn't come to a conclusion. Soft Mist raised her spear and rushed forward to attack. Don't go in the water. Stay on land. Let's see if there really are any tricks. Knowing that there was no Yi Chu or Su Mucheng, the 5 thought about fighting. They immediately got into position. Each player took a direction, guarding against the charging Soft Mist and looking towards their surroundings. The island with the dungeon entrance was very small. If you stood on top of the rock at the cave entrance, you would get a sweeping view. In truth, there was nowhere to hide. At best, they could only be hiding behind the cave. Even so, the 5 were very careful. From time to time, they would raise their heads to look up at the sky to see if there was anyone behind the cave climbing up to ambush them. In the end, their worries were for nothing. There was only the spear in front of them that was stabbing towards them. Soft Mist charged directly towards the cleric on the team. Tang Ru was no longer that noob who didn't know anything. After playing for some time and learning this and that from Yi Shu, she at least had this sort of basic knowledge. In a 1 against many, if the cleric wasn't killed off quickly, the opponents would be able to heal up. Even if they couldn't kill her directly, they would be able to slowly whittle her down. Killing the cleric was the first step for battle. Chapter 380, Key. This important strategy was very basic. Anyone with a bit of game knowledge understood this. Whenever there was a team battle, the clerics would always be protected. Even though this was only a small-scale battle right now, with many against 1, the 5 players didn't dare be careless, since they knew of Tang Ru's history and immediately went into a team formation. 4 players formed a square with the cleric being protected in the middle. Soft Mist was charging head-on. If she wanted to reach the cleric, she would have to break through the 2 players in front. One of these 2 players was a Ghostblade, while the other was a knight. The guild's elite team coordinated well together. The knight moved forward with his shield raised to meet the attacker. The Ghostblade stayed behind and sent up a ghost boundary. Apart from reducing damage, the shield was also important for reducing effects from attacks. For example, the Battle Mage's Falling Flower Palm was a blow-away attack that would cause the player hit by it to be sent flying and knocked down to the ground. However, if the palm hit a shield, the blow-away effect wouldn't appear, and instead it would be reduced to a knockback. The character would be forced back a few steps, but he wouldn't be knocked down to the ground. This sort of basic knowledge was something that Tang Ru already knew. But she still sent out a falling flower palm as if she didn't know this, and it hit the knight's shield. With the shield protecting the body and a cleric to heal, the knight ignored the hit. After being hit by the falling flower palm and staggering backwards, the ghost blade had to dodge. Crashing into each other would at least interrupt his ghost boundaries cast. This slight dodge forced him away from the knight's protection range and caused a slight change in position. A cold light slashed across. The ghost blade was caught unprepared and was flung into the sky. The ghost blade hastily adjusted his camera and saw Soft Mist stand up from a crouching position. Her position was extremely brazen. She was actually right next to the knight's shield. After pushing the knight back with a falling flower palm, she rolled forward to stay close and seized an opening that wouldn't have been considered one to a normal player. Shield attack, the ghost blade roared. Because he was a member of the team, he knew that when knights had a shield, it was true that the larger the surface of the shield, the better the protection. However, if it was too large, the shield might obstruct his line of sight. His teammate Knight's maple leaf shield had an extremely large surface. In a dungeon, knights love to use this type of huge shield. However, in a PvP battle with many variations, knights had to be careful when choosing a shield. The best examples could be seen in the pro scene. The self-made shields in the pro scene were never large because large shields weren't suitable. Right now, this knight had suffered from his large shield. Soft Mist's roll had been very precise. She didn't bump into him and use the shield as a cover to stick close to the knight without him knowing. The ghost blade in midair saw this and naturally gave a warning. That knight hadn't completely realized the situation, but when he heard his brother shouting, he didn't hesitate and immediately slammed his shield forward with a shield attack. However, Soft Mist had already rolled to the side. She stabbed forward with her spear and pierced through the ghost blade. Target stabbed in the air would be blown away a bit. The ghost blade was sent flying by the attack to the others, who were still studying whether there was someone waiting to ambush them in the cave. Under his warning, the brothers were able to dodge this human meat bag. Tang Ru ignored them. With just a few moves, she had circled around one of the two characters in front and sent the other one flying away. The cleric that had originally been protected was now completely exposed. Clerics weren't so powerless that they had no means of surviving in battle. However, he was still too slow compared to Tang Ru. Tang Ru's fingers flew across the keyboard. The spear in Soft Mist's hand danced around, sticking to the cleric. Yishu also felt very gratified seeing this. There was finally some skill in her moves. She at least understood how to link her normal attacks and skills together. For players with fast hand speed like Tang Ru, these types of combo fighting styles should be better. Voidwalk's 5-player team consisted of 2 Ghostblades, 1 Knight, 1 Cleric, and 1 Elementalist. The 2 Ghostblades were completely imitating Team Void's Ghostblade duo. One was a Phantom Demon, while the other was a hybrid. At this moment, the 2 Ghostblades were on one side and the Knight was behind her. Tang Ru observed her surroundings. She comboed a few strikes on the cleric and, not waiting for the knight and the Ghostblade to come rescue the cleric, she used a falling flower palm to blast the cleric in the direction of the elementalist. The elementalist wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. He had been casting magic attacks at Soft Mist the entire time. But to his dismay, it was as if she wasn't looking at his magic. All of his magic attacks landed on her. None of the magic attacks were able to interrupt Soft Mist's attacks. And it was only now that she seemed to suddenly realize that there was an elementalist there. The hit-flying cleric shot towards the elementalist. At this instant, the elementalist even felt gratified that he was no longer being regarded as heir. Not just the team, but even the pro Yishu was shocked by Tang Ru's strategy. This girl was always this bold and fierce. Yishu understood what she was thinking. She wanted to take down the cleric at all costs. This was because she believed firmly that if she couldn't take down the cleric, her efforts would be for nothing. The cleric was flying towards the elementalist, who obviously avoided him. At this moment, Tang Ru's Soft Mist already had all of her chasers buffing her and she quickly chased after them. Elementalists didn't have much close combat ability. He immediately cast an ice wall in order to try and block her. In the end, Soft Mist went directly towards the ice wall. She didn't feel that it was a pity using her hard-to-come-by chasers on the ice wall. The ice wall shattered in the blink of an eye, causing the elementalist to go wide-eyed in shock. He couldn't tell if this was being quick, being fierce, or both. Soft mist dashed through the shattered ice wall. It was already too late for the elementalist to widen the distance. He was launched into the air by a sky strike and then sent flying towards the two ghost blades with a falling flower palm. Yi Shu was still watching on the side. Tang Ru's play style was copying his. In the battle at Line Canyon, where Yi Shu was fighting several opponents, he had the opponents flying around like pinballs. Tang Ru's intent was the same. Yi Shu could only sigh, seeing this. It was pretty impressive that Tang Ru could think of using this, and with her mechanics, it was certainly possible to do it. However, she was still a new player, so there were still areas where she didn't know what to do. This type of strategy was something that Yi Shu could use, but she couldn't. It wasn't an issue of mechanics, nor an issue of experience, but rather her class. Yi Shu's Lord Grimm was an unspecialized. At level 20, he had access to 120 skills. Because of all of these skills, Yi Shu had incredible controlling ability. However, Tang Ru was using a battle mage. Even at level 70, she wouldn't have that many skills. In other words, that type of control over the field by Yi Shu couldn't be done in any normal circumstance. In order to copy his strategy, besides unspecialized players, it could only be done with several players. Only several players could have enough skills to create such a pinball scenario. Tang Ru wanted to do it with just her alone. She would soon discover the problem: she didn't have enough skills to use. That's no good. Yi Shu had seen the problem and he wouldn't not point it out, so he went up to tell Tang Ru. What? Tang Ru was too busy to turn her head. You can't control the field like this. You don't have enough skills to use. Plus, if you keep on spamming your skills, you'll run out of mana, Yi Shu said. Then I'll just kill however many I can kill, Tang Ru said. Huh? Yi Shu stared blankly. This sort of compromise didn't seem like this sister's style. When did such a sudden change happen? I'll just do my best, Tang Ru said. Yi Shu began to sweat. Sure enough, this sister continued to fight with everything she had. The elementalist transformed into a missile as Tang Ru pounced towards the cleric again. Voidwalk's team completely saw through Tang Ru's intent. Their team's leader was the knight. Seeing this, he suddenly shouted, "Into the water!" Water. This word had left a deep mark in the elite's hearts. They hadn't thought that they were that bad in the water, or at least so much so that two players were enough to wipe out dozens of them. She can't water. The knight couldn't find the right words to use. For a successful team, listening to the shot caller was very important. Even though the cleric's mind was still in a mess, he still heard his captain's orders. He hastily sprinted towards the water, as soft mist chased after him. Tang Ru didn't think that her opponents would have realized what her big weakness was. The water. She really couldn't do anything in the water. She was fast enough to catch up and stop the cleric from entering the water. But if she did that, the others would be able to catch up to the cleric and the distance that she had taken great efforts to widen would be gone. Rotate. At this moment, a calm voice suddenly sounded out. Tang Ru was startled for a bit, but she quickly understood. She sprinted to the cleric and pushed the cleric out to the side. Everyone had already understood the key to this battle. With the cleric sent flying to the side, they went to chase after him. However, the battle mage had the speed advantage with the chasers and was faster than them. When the cleric climbed back up, he was still thinking of going into the water, but soft mist had already arrived. Her falling flower palm was still on cooldown, so she used a sky strike into a dragon tooth instead, to send the cleric flying. If you calculate the direction and distance well enough, you can do it so that the others won't be able to catch up, Yi Shu said.